Wow. Just wow. If anybody had told me even 2 weeks ago that Michael Matt of the Remnant, one of the OG traditional Catholic guys of the last few generations, would have engaged in hysterics and emotional regurgitation of leftist, radical, liberal talking points, I would have said, you're nuts. It'll never happen. Well, guess what? It did happen. I'm going to show you, and together, maybe we can figure this out. What do you think? You know, I jumped back on Twitter about 2 weeks ago after being off of it for 10 years. I just got tired of the vitriolic and toxic environment among Catholics on Twitter, going after each other. And I said, you know what, that's enough. But then the new Pope was elected, Pope Leo, our Holy Father, was elected, and things seem to be much better. But then I'm thinking, I'm missing out on a lot of news about the Holy Father and about the church in general. Let me just jump back on Twitter. Maybe it'll help my channel, my YouTube channel as well, and I can engage with a lot of people better. Boy, do I regret it, though. And I said it going back on Twitter or X, that I would regret it. And guess what? I do. But it just shocked me when I saw what Michael Matt put out on X. His post about the second fatal shooting in Minneapolis astounded me. I was shocked. I really was. I was speechless. I mean, at first, I thought the gals over there at The View had hacked into Michael's X account and started spewing all this leftist propaganda. Turns out, no, it was Michael Matt saying all this stuff. I got to read this to you. Then I'll go line by line, and I'll show you just how irresponsible this man has been in this context here regarding his post on X and all that stuff. Astounding is the only word I can come up with. But it starts out, another fatal shooting, exclamation mark. Okay. Yeah, it's bad. Happened. Okay. There is so much more going on here. Please watch my latest Underground, his video. He's plugging his video. No problem with that. We do not know, I want you to pay attention to this. We do not know all the details yet, and I caution our viewers not to make conclusions based on video. We need to wait and see what happened. If you blame MPD for allegedly not cooperating with ICE, please understand that MPD, Minneapolis Police Department, has to live in the city. They are not temporary cops. When badly trained and masked up feds come in from the outside and start roughing up citizens and even shooting protesters, it would be long-term suicide for the MPD to appear to be supporting such police state tactics. If this really is the problem, then it is dangerous for ICE to persist with these policies without local support and thus put the community at even greater risk. ICE needs to pull out now, meet with local and state law enforcement, and try another way in the future. At this point, the feds are killing more Minnesotans than the illegal aliens are. Wow. All right, so let's go back and take it one line at a time. I already said something about another fatal shooting. We do not know all the details yet, and I caution our viewers not to make conclusions based on video. But then he goes right into that, and he does just that. He made conclusions based on the video. And that's borne out if you read the comments under that post. Like one guy, he wrote, badly trained, says who? He came right back with, did you watch the video? So he's making valued judgments on what happened here based on the video, when he just cautioned everybody not to do that. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. Irresponsible. If you blame Minneapolis PD for allegedly, and let's just stop there, allegedly, why is it that Minneapolis Police Department, which has engaged in malfeasance by not helping ICE, why is it that they're afforded that benefit of the doubt with the word allegedly used? He didn't use allegedly with ICE or any of that stuff, but let's go on. If you blame MPD for allegedly not cooperating with ICE, please understand that MPD has to live in this city. So by that logic, Michael, they shouldn't enforce any laws. They got to live in this city. I mean, if they can't help enforce existing federal statutes, which they have every right to, and they can do if the feds ask them to do that, they can effectively deputize them to help them out. But if they have to live in a city, so they really shouldn't be expected to do that, then why would they be expected to enforce any other laws and arrest murderers, rapists, robbers? Come on, that was ridiculous. That was asinine. They are not temporary cops. Again, talking about Minneapolis Police Department. What is that? What does that even mean, not temporary cops? Is he saying that ICE is? These career law enforcement agents that regularly engage in law enforcement activity, they're temporary cops? Is that what you're saying, Michael? That's, again, asinine. It's stupid, irresponsible, and unprofessional. When badly trained and masked up feds come in from the outside and start roughing up citizens and even shooting protesters, because that's what these two were, right? They were just protesting. They were just calmly and peacefully protesting, right, Michael? No, they weren't. It would be long-term suicide for the MPD to appear to be supporting such police state tactics. It's unbelievable that he would make this statement. First of all, if the MPD would have helped from the beginning, it probably wouldn't have gotten this out of hand. Look at all the red states and the red areas where ICE is going in and doing exactly what they're doing in Minneapolis, but guess what? They're not having to shoot protesters, and they're not just protesters, Michael. That's a lie. They are left-wing agitators. They are radical left-wing agitators. They're not protesters. They're not. So that's a lie, Michael. And who says they're badly trained? Where does that come from? That comes directly from the liberal talking points that are regurgitated on MSNBC, NBC, CNN. It comes directly from George Soros, who's funding a lot of this stuff. And that's not just conspiracy theory. That is a fact. They followed the money. It's George Soros and this guy from China that is, tied in with Code Pink and all that stuff, which is all funded by China. That's fact. It's been proven. That's where that comes from. Badly trained? They're not badly trained. They're well trained. They're career law enforcement. A lot of them are prior military. They have all kinds of training. That's another lie, Michael, that you're just regurgitating uncritically. How is that not unprofessional of a news guy? How is that not irresponsible for a news guy to do? How is that not unprofessional? And can we just talk about the masking up of these agents? Now, there are some that have defended the feds masking up, and rightly so. But they've only used one argument here, and there's another reason for them masking up that I haven't seen anybody put out there, but is absolutely valid and true. Okay, so the first argument I'm not going to go real far into because it's already been put out there, and it's true though. These guys are being doxxed. The leftist radicals are doxing these guys. They're finding out their addresses, their personal information, and even, their kids' names and their wives' names, and they're putting out threats against these guys and their families. They're threatening to rape and murder their wives and children. Does that sound familiar? That's right out of the Black Lives Matter playbook, that terror org that's still around. But this is just an outgrowth of the same thing. These are Black Lives Matter type people, and a lot of them are involved in Black Lives Matter. So they're doxing these guys. They have to hide their identity for that reason, for safety. The second reason that I haven't heard anybody address yet is ICE agents, agent being the operative word here, ICE agents routinely engage in undercover operations. I worked undercover narcotics for a long time, and I had to go into crack houses and make dope deals in parking lots and things like that. And so when I had to take enforcement action or whatever, I had to wear a ski mask. If we were doing an operation out in the streets, jump out or buy bust operations, reverse operations, I had to wear a ski mask. If I went into a jail to interview a confidential informant or to interview a suspect in something, I had to wear a ski mask because it's so dangerous to just put your face out there and then go into an undercover situation. You're going to get killed. So I haven't seen anybody address that part of it, but ICE agents do routinely engage in undercover operations, so they have to hide their identity. It's very valid, and anybody with half a brain can figure that out. But no, Michael's got to regurgitate that leftist talking point. Masked agents, like that's some kind, it's perfectly legal for them to do that. Perfectly legal, moral, and ethical. So get off of that. And getting back to that whole badly trained bullshit, and that's what it is, okay? I'm just going to call it out as that. You know, he starts out talking out of one side of his mouth by saying it's very important that we don't jump to conclusions based on video, yet he watches the video, and according to him, in his vast law enforcement experience, these guys are badly trained because what he saw in the video, he comes to that conclusion. And in the comments of that X post that he made, somebody else had written, badly trained says who? And he's like, did you see the video? So again, he's making these judgments with no training and experience in law enforcement whatsoever, never having had to fight for your life on the sidewalk or in a dark alley or whatever, never having to confront an armed suspect, which is what this last guy is or was. Never had to do any of that, but the news guy who, you know, I think he risked a paper cut in his job. He's going to make a valued judgment on what these ICE agents did here on the sidewalk. Brilliant. Again, irresponsible, unprofessional, hysterical, and emotional. If this really is the problem, then it is dangerous for ICE to persist with these policies without local support and thus to put the community at even greater risk. ICE isn't putting the community at greater risk. They're not. ICE isn't putting any community at risk. The people putting the community at risk are the cops who are failing, the local cops who are refusing to do their jobs, and these left-wing radical agitators who are putting themselves in a position to get hurt. The local politicians who are stoking up these agitators, giving them license basically, telling them to go out and do this. But by all means, Michael, don't blame them. Don't hold them accountable. Let's go after the cops. Great job, Michael. And you know, and I got to stop here and just say full disclosure, just to be honest with everybody. Michael, Matt, and the Remnant, they published an article in their newspaper about me, 2021, I think it was, 2022, something like that. And I guess I was the first in a series called The Good Cop Files, where my career and parts of my life were written about. And he was very gracious, okay? The man sent my wife and me 2 tickets, free tickets to his Catholic Identity Conference. He was very gracious. I really, appreciated that he had sent us those tickets. And it was a great conference, amazing conference. And I was going to say, I highly recommend you try out and go to one of these Catholic Identity Conferences of his. But now I don't know that I can make that recommendation. I honestly don't. I don't know what he's going to spew from the stage at the next conference about this kind of thing, And what's really sad is people who don't know any better are buying into his rhetoric now too. Catholics. And it's, you expect it from liberal Catholics because they're largely behind LMNOP, weddings, marriages, and, abortion and the whole bit. They're just fine with all that stuff. But to see traditional Catholics turn on law enforcement like that, it's a little disheartening, I got to say. But, hey, that's where we're at, right? Let's continue. ICE needs to pull out now. Meet with local and state law enforcement and try another way in the future. I agree wholeheartedly. You know what? They ought to just pull out of Minneapolis and let that hellhole descend into even further chaos and disgustingness that it already is. They ought to just pull out and go, you know what? You take it. The $8 billion in taxpayer money that disappeared, all that grift going on, all the violence and disgustingness that's going on, take it. We'll go somewhere else where we're better appreciated. They should pull out. That much I agree with Michael on. But the last line is the most reprehensible part of this whole thing. At this point, the feds are killing more Minnesotans than the illegal aliens are. First of all, you have no way of knowing that, Michael. You have no way of knowing that. But what's really insidious and disgusting about that last line is he's purposely conflating officer-involved shootings that are justified with murder. That's what he's doing here. He's conflating that because the feds are killing more Minnesotans than the illegal aliens are. There's no way that an illegal alien can justifiably kill somebody if they're here illegally. I mean, okay, self-defense, maybe there could be an argument, but what he's getting at is the murderers, the rapists, the robbers that are present in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, allegedly are not killing as many people as... Really? These people have documented histories of murder. And you're going to... So what, Michael? We have to wait then for an illegal alien to go ahead and commit an outright murder while they're in Minneapolis for this to... I mean, it's a juvenile take. It's just so simplistic and stupid, that take. It astounds me that he would even say something so ridiculous. Honestly, it is so beneath a man of his stature, or what I thought was his stature. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words here. Okay, so I couldn't help myself, and I had to respond to that X post of his. And I'll read it for you, and I'll put it up on the screen. Again, full disclosure, I'm going to be very open and honest about what I said to him. So I responded by saying, "Wow," in all caps with an exclamation mark. "This is a shockingly irresponsible statement from you, Michael. ICE agents are not badly trained. And complaining about the masks? When did you get so woke? What happened to you? Wow." And I guess he didn't like my use of the word wow here. So then he responded to me by saying, "You don't think what happened could have been avoided with better trained agents? Wow." So he throws that back at me. And then he's got to put in some quote by George Orwell. "The party told you to ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command," end quote. Yeah, we all read that book, Michael, in the 8th grade. Come on. That was so devastating, an argument that you would make. That was so profound to put that in there, Michael. Give me a break. But to answer his question, no, I don't think what happened could have been avoided with better trained agents. It wasn't a matter of training. And in fact, let me just talk a little bit about this because I have seen other comments about it. There's a real good reason why 6 agents will jump on one guy to arrest him, okay? If one agent goes and tries to make the arrest and then the other guy fights him like this guy did, okay? Pretty, whatever the hell his name was, then the agent is going to have to resort to impact weapons, chemical, OC spray, things like that, which this guy already did try, the agent already did try. But it's more of a one-on-one mugging and mauling, punching, kick, because which is all legal for the agent to do. But if 6 agents can jump on the person, they can quickly get them under control in most cases and not have to resort to striking that person. That's why they do that. In fact, when this first started all over the country, I remember watching these agents make these arrests, and I was stunned at the lack of strikes delivered to these suspects by the agents. And it made me think, I wonder if somebody told these guys, look, watch the strikes because you're on camera, this and that. Even though it's legal, it doesn't look great. Okay, so let's try to wrestle them into submission than to beat them into submission, again, which is legal to do. So, and as I'm watching these things, I was amazed at the restraint shown by all of these agents, which shows a great amount of training. But again, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth because, again, he's making judgments on what these agents did based on a video and based on 0 law enforcement training or experience, okay? That would be like me going to him going, Michael, on that issue of the Remnant, you shouldn't have put the heading there, and you should have, that's, better. You got to get better trained, in typesetting and journalistic endeavors. And I know nothing about journalism. I'm not going to sit there and try to pontificate on how he runs his newspaper, where, by the way, the worst thing that he's got to worry about is a paper cut, as opposed to the agents who have to worry about losing their lives, okay? So I responded to him, and I said, "No, Michael, I don't think this was an incident, or I don't think this incident was a matter of a lack of training, but as a result of the actions of the agitator." And I asked him, "And what, in your vast law enforcement experience, do you think the agents did wrong here?" Wow. And like I've already addressed the whole lack of training canard, because that's what it is. And I added, you start out by cautioning people not to make conclusions based on a video. But then you turn around and you do that exact thing. Brother, you're wrong here. I respect you greatly, and I do, or did. I'm still not sure which way I'm going to go with this guy. I said, I respect you greatly, but stay in your lane. Okay? You're a newspaper guy, Michael. You've never had to fight for your life on the side of a road. Stay in your lane. And I said, you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, because he doesn't. He shoots back with, we both watched the videos. Again, he's saying that he's making these judgments based on the videos when he told people not to do that. He cautioned them not to do that. He's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. Wow. We both watched the videos. Obviously, we won't be able to agree on this. Wow. He's got to throw wow back at me. I said, yeah, we both did watch the videos. The only difference is you've never done the job. You've never had to fight with an armed suspect. I never thought I'd ever see you parrot lib talking points. How disappointing. Wow. So I'm throwing wow back out there too. So he comes back. I have. You have what? I read that as he's had to fight with an armed suspect before. Love to hear more about that, Michael. But of course, that's where you left it. I have, but it's fine. Relax. I already said we won't be able to agree on this. Wow. I said, yeah, I spent 30 years in law enforcement and unfortunately had too many deadly force encounters, and I did. A lot of it has to do with some PTSD that I've got, that I've been dealing with for years. And I said, I was also a defensive tactics instructor for many years. I must have missed reading about your vast experience in law enforcement. And I am relaxed. Bitterly disappointed, but I'm relaxed. Wow. I get it. Minneapolis is your hometown. You don't like seeing what's going on, but you're blaming the wrong people, Michael. Again, look at any red state or red area where ICE is doing this stuff. This kind of thing isn't happening because the local law enforcement are helping them. In the state of Florida, the governor made no bones about saying, this ain't going to play in Florida. Local sheriffs are saying it. Local police chiefs are saying the same thing. That's why you're not seeing the mayhem and the confusion and the lawlessness that you're seeing in Minneapolis. You don't talk about the mayor there, that Mayor Fry, the guy who's cucking the Minneapolis police chief, who sits there like an idiot while the mayor denigrates law enforcement and gives people license to agitate and to willfully and actively obstruct law enforcement. Let me tell you something. You do not have a right to obstruct and attack law enforcement. You don't. If you feel that your arrest or the arrest of another is unwarranted or illegal, you must comply still. Fight it out in the courts. That's what the courts are for. You do not have a right to fight with law enforcement or to obstruct them. You don't. Why don't you say that, Michael? Why doesn't the mayor say that? Why doesn't the police chief say that? That police chief, he's an embarrassment to law enforcement. That guy needs to resign, or grow a pair finally and tell that mayor, let me run my police department the way it should be run. He won't do it though, because he's too afraid of losing his job. And a little bit about this guy that just got shot by ICE. Pretty is his name, Pretty, whatever. A lot is being made of the fact, alleged fact, I've not seen proof, that he had a concealed weapons permit and he had a right to carry that handgun that he had on him. Okay, let's assume he did have a concealed weapons permit. What you don't have a right to do is I don't care what state you're in, there's always a clause for concealed weapons permit that says you're not allowed to use that weapon for an illegal and unlawful purpose or wear one while you're engaging in unlawful activities. And that's exactly what he was doing. His parents, that guy's parents, and can we please, for the love of everything that is holy, can we please stop referring to this guy and that militant LMNOP woman who tried to run over the agent and was shot in the face? Can we please stop referring to them as victims? Even the conservative media call them victims. They're not victims. If they're victims, then that means there's a perpetrator. That means there's a bad guy, which would logically then follow that ICE are bad guys. What are we doing here, folks? What are we doing? They're not victims. They're suspects. They're agitators. Okay? But let's go on. This guy, they talked to his parents. They said, yeah, he had a concealed weapons permit. He rarely ever carried his gun, though. Rarely ever carried his gun. That's telling. But he chose to carry it with extra mags. Okay? Look, I've been carrying off-duty for 30 years now, or more than 30 years, almost 40 years. I've been carrying off-duty or concealed, and I rarely carry an extra magazine, okay? Because when I carry all the time, it's used just for self-preservation or the preservation of life of another, and I feel I can do it in a circumstance. I've got enough rounds to do it. I'm well trained enough. Maybe I should carry an extra mag. I don't know. But I'm not going to go out there and obstruct law enforcement and start agitating. So when these agents went to go hands-on and arrest them, as they were completely justified in doing, they realize he's armed. Okay. When you're in a fight, and watch the video full speed, watch it, goes off real fast. Okay. When you're in a fight like that, and I've been in thousands of those types of things, okay? I've lost count how many times I've had to fight a suspect into custody. Hated it every time. There's no fun in fighting with anybody, okay? And if anybody who says it's fun has a screw loose. But I've had to do it more times than I can possibly count. So if you're in a fight and things are popping off real quick, and you realize the guy is armed, you're not going to then stop and go, time out, everybody. Let's make sure that he doesn't have a concealed weapons permit before we continue, okay? No, you're not going to stop and do that. The guy's armed. He's already an agitator. He's already obstructing. He's already resisting violently. And all you know now is that he also has a gun. And look, the full investigation is not completed right away. But in my 30 years of training and experience, what it looked like to me was that it was justified. And the information that I've gotten tells me it was justified. Okay? A lot's been made about, oh, they shot him 10 times. Why did they have to shoot him so much? When you've got 6 agents in a scrum, okay, fighting with this guy, another agent yells, he's got a gun, and then they back off. You're not going to then, again, take time. Okay, I will be the one to shoot. You do not shoot. You do not shoot. And I'm going to aim for his pinky toe. And we're just going to go from there, fellas, okay? No, you're not going to do that. In your training, and this is how all officers are trained, all across all agencies, is you react, okay? You shoot center mass to stop the attack. All these guys knew was gun, gun, gun. So they react. 10 rounds with 6 guys there, it's not a lot. It's really not. And watch how fast these rounds go off. Okay? So 10 rounds, I'm not making too much out of that. We need to realize where the fault lies here. The fault lies in this pretty guy. Okay? He is the one who inserted himself into a situation he had no right to insert himself in. He had every right constitutionally to stand on the sidewalk, not impeding traffic, not obstructing law enforcement duties, hold a sign and say, ICE bad, okay? He had every right to do that. What he didn't have a right to do is jump in the middle of this and obstruct ICE, which he did, and then fight when they tried to take him into custody. He had no right to do that. And the fact that he was such an idiot that he brings a loaded gun with 2 extra mags to the scene, and he knew he was going to get into this. He knew he was going to get into it with these ICE agents. The fact that he brought a gun, legal or not, makes him out to be an even bigger idiot. Okay? So we need to put the onus on who deserves it. Him for his actions, the mayor, and Waltz, and all these other Dems, liberal Dems, that are not just giving license for these guys to do this, but they're encouraging them to do this. Did you not see how the Democrats put out not too long ago, we need to bleed for the cause. We need to die for the cause. They want these idiots to do that. They were jumping for joy when that LMNOP woman tried to run over the agent and was shot for her efforts. They jumped for joy when this last guy was shot and killed for his efforts. This is exactly what they want, and they're useful idiots. You know, the last thing that I wanted to do on my Catholic channel was to jump into this whole ICE thing. I know the country is suffering from ICE overload, and nobody really wants to. But when somebody with the platform that Michael Matt has wants to sit there and spew this ridiculous ignorance and regurgitate radical liberal talking points, and then he defends him talking out of both sides of his mouth, he defends that, and he doubles down on it. It's irresponsible, unprofessional, and you know what? I would say it's damn near calumny what he engaged in. But I'll leave that to his confessor and to his conscience. Just go back and look when all this started happening. Look at who was spewing that masked agents thing and badly trained and part-time. Just look at who started that with that rhetoric. It was always the leftists, the radical leftist. And Michael Matt, of all people, is regurgitating that. Uncritically, just repeating these idiotic phrases and words that these people are. I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm in a bad dream. I cannot believe that Michael Matt, of all people, has been doing this. Eventually, the mask will come off when people are being disingenuous, and that's what happened here with Michael Matt. So, look, I'm going to pray for him. He obviously needs prayers. I've been praying for him. And I just hope that he comes to his senses, because what else is he going to do? What else is he going to start regurgitating from the left? What other leftist talking points, what other leftist ideas at his age too? He's letting the leftist ideas dictate how he conducts himself. It's sad. It's pathetic, really. But here we are, folks. Look, I didn't want to have to get into all this. So I just want to ask my viewers to pray for him. Obviously, he's working out some kind of issues. I feel bad for the guy. Just pray for him. And thanks for listening. And until next time, Padre Pio, Ora Pro Nobis.